In this episode of Quakers Today, we ask, what do Quakers believe?
After being raised Jewish and Quaker, Adam Segal-Isaacson considers the question, do all Quakers hold the same beliefs?
I share my conversation with an Evangelical Quaker from Central America. Before coming to the USA to study, Jasson Arevalo assumed all Quakers were Bible-believing evangelists for Jesus.
And you'll hear about a new Pendle Hill pamphlet that explores the question, what makes someone a Quaker? I am Sweet Miche.
And I'm Peterson Toscano.
This is Season 5, Episode 4 of the Quakers Today podcast, a project of Friends Fiduciary and American Friends Service Committee. When someone learns I'm a Quaker, they almost always ask a challenging question. So, what do Quakers believe?
Same. And we have no quick, easy answer. Sweet Miche and I are part of a branch of Quakerism known as liberal, unprogrammed friends. Our style of worship is old school, Orthodox Quaker, in which a group meets for long stretches of silence. If someone feels inspired, they may stand up and give a message.
Unprogrammed friends differentiate ourselves by what's missing in our worship services, elements that are common in most Christian churches. For instance, our Quaker meetings rarely have music or singing. We don't have a service with regular readings, sermons, or pastor.
And most striking, we do not have a creed, a set of beliefs we can recite or share with others.
If you want to discover what liberal, unprogrammed Quakers believe, I encourage you to speak with multiple Quakers. You'll walk away with a smorgasbord of beliefs. The one thing we do have in common is our commitment to sit in silence and listen.
But we are not the only type of Quakers in the world. Recently, I spoke with Jasson Arevalo, the son of Quaker pastors from El Salvador. A little over 2 years ago, Jasson came to the United States to study at Earlham School of Religion, or ESR. Jasson recently wrote an article for Friends Journal. It's entitled, "You Will Be Told What You Must Do, a Biblical Perspective on Quaker Pastors." I'm a former evangelical who is now a member of an unprogrammed Quaker meeting. For a long time, I've wanted to speak with a church-going, Bible-believing evangelical Quaker like Jasson. Could you describe what it's like to be an evangelical Quaker?
Well, first of all, we are programmed Quakers. We sing, we have music, preaching. Bible is something really important for us. We evangelize, go to the street to talk to people of Jesus. I will say that probably are the main distinctive belief.
So how are you different from, say, the Baptist?
About the sacraments, that is something that we practice as early Quakers. We don't do the practice itself, but
So
we
you don't do
believe
baptism,
no.
and you don't have Holy Communion?
We believe in the meaning of, but in a spiritual way.
The Bible, obviously, is very important. Studying the Bible, preaching the Bible.
They are preaching in all of our meetings.
Could you talk a little bit about your faith in Jesus?
When I was around 12 or 13, I had a personal encounter with God, with Jesus. Before that, I went to church because there was no option. In this experience, I decided to follow Jesus. I felt complete and living the lifestyle in church, doing ministry. My relation to Jesus was better. I get to know better Jesus. When I was living in Guatemala, I was there when God called me to the pastoral minister. At the beginning, I rejected because congregations are tough sometimes to us. But God called me. I understood that was the purpose that He had for me. I'm happy now with the decision that I took in that time.
Before you came to the United States, what experience did you have with U.S. Quakers? In particular, U.S. Quakers who are unprogrammed liberal friends?
No, I didn't know anything about unprogrammed Quakers. I had some experience with missionaries, but they were evangelicals from California. I have a very nice experience among all kind of Quakers here. I have practiced the silence and the on-program worship. I enjoy that.
How do you understand that phrase, the authority of the Bible? And what's your view of the Bible from your perspective?
Bible is the word of God itself. We as evangelical Quakers, we rule our whole life by the Bible. We also believe in the inspiration of the scriptures and the inerrancy.
Yeah, that's it. The inerrancy. Yeah.
If we put together these three things, well, at the end, you have for us to read the Bible, to listen Bible in preaching. It's just like listen directly the voice of God. It's kind of the way that early Quakers also approach scriptures. George Fox himself says the scriptures is the word of God. Yeah, it's the way we believe.
In the United States, there was a split that occurred, this split that has led to these different branches with the programmed, the unprogrammed, evangelical, the universalist friends. A tension occurred some years ago about personnel policy. They couldn't be just living with somebody, and they couldn't be gay, married. A lot of people thought the conflict was over gay marriage, but I always saw that the conflict was over the authority of Scripture and the inerrancy of Scripture. I am gay myself. I was like, could you not talk about us, but talk about your real problem? And that's the Bible, how we see it differently. Because even if you settle this gay issue, you still see the Bible in two different ways. And that seems to be the real split. Some evangelical Quakers in America and the US, they believe the Bible, like you say, is inerrant. It has the authority. It's the final word. In liberal friends, we almost never know what the person next to us believes. They could believe in Jesus. They could be a Buddhist. They could be Jewish. They may not believe in God at all. They may be an atheist. We don't talk about it. We just kind of sit silently and we worship together. And that must be a strange experience for you, I would think, to be in worship with people who believe so differently, or maybe not.
Could be worse, but
Okay.
something that helped me a lot is that our community in ESR is very respectful, very open mind. They are really interested on what you have to say about the way you see the scriptures. Some of them, they never have heard about, for example, the evangelical interpretation of the scriptures. So when I got to participate in class, it's like something new for them, and they ask me to talk more, and they ask me, how do you interpret this, or how do you see this? Also, when they share the way everybody interpret Bible or thoughts everybody have about Bible is very formative for me. This dynamic of sharing, not trying to convince others about what I believe, I think that have helped me a lot, because I feel that I can stand on my belief. I also respect others' perspective and I learn from them. This dynamic have helped me a lot. On the contrary, it could be very traumatic for me to get to a place where they try to impose this new knowledge, but it haven't been like that.
What I'm hearing you say is that it works there at ESR because people respect each other. They're listening to each other. they're sharing their beliefs, and it sounds like you are curious, they're curious, and that curiosity helps a lot, but no one is imposing their beliefs.
Just like that.
It's like, here it is in an open hand. This is what I believe. Take it, leave it, look at it. It's okay.
You just heard Peterson in conversation with Jasson Arevalo.
Adam Segal-Isaacson tells us about growing up Jewish and Quaker.
My favorite metaphor about God is the story of the blind man and the elephant. And each man feels a different part of the elephant and thinks this is what the elephant is about. And I think that in a lot of ways, that's the way we are about God, is that we all see different aspects of God, and the totality of God is greater than all of that. My name is Adam Segal-Isaacson. I attend Brooklyn Meeting, and my pronouns are whatever you'd like them to be. I'm not particular. Quakers are very broad in their beliefs. I think it works by getting at some fundamentals of what a lot of religions have preached, which is to bring people together. Traditionally, Quakers were Christian, mostly because in England in the 1640s, there wasn't anybody who wasn't a Christian. But even in that first generation of Quakers, there was a reaching out to others. And so there was always a sense of it being a larger group, that we could encompass anybody who was inclined to be encompassed. That has meant that people have come to Quakerism from a variety of backgrounds, and that their experiences can help enhance our experiences, so that we learn from each other and we can grow from that. I was raised parallel going to meeting, and I went to temple on a fairly regular basis. There's been no conflict for me between Quakerism and Judaism, because Judaism's focus is on doing mitzvah, doing good things. And in the context of what is happening at any given time, friends are trying to see ways to make things better for people. Friends are able to exist with vastly different beliefs because they see each other as being seekers after the truth rather than people who already know the truth. And so that allows for a lot of different approaches. I think that the blending of different things together can create something that's greater. You know, if everybody's singing the same tune, that's not harmony, that's monotony. And when you think about complex pieces of music, you see all sorts of different things happening and moving together, and they don't always sound perfectly together, but then they do sort of come together in the end. And I think that's a metaphor that has been very powerful for me as a way of, you know, seeing how different viewpoints can join.
That was Adam Segal-Isaacson from the QuakerSpeak video, Do All Quakers Hold the Same Beliefs? You can watch it and other Quaker-themed videos on the QuakerSpeak YouTube page or at QuakerSpeak.com. A big thank you to Layla Cuthrell for filming and editing these videos. Many thanks to Jasson Arevalo for being on today's show. You will be told what you must do, a biblical perspective on Quaker pastors, appears in the December 2025 issue of Friends Journal. You can also read it for free at friendsjournal.org.
Jasson and Adam have very different ideas about the boundaries of Quakerism and what we believe. It brings us to a central question. What makes someone a Quaker?
It's a question that feels so simple, but absolutely isn't. And it so happens that there's a new Pendle Hill pamphlet that dives into the deep end of this question. Pendle Hill is a Quaker center outside of Philadelphia that has been publishing these short pamphlets that friends write to expand understanding. They expand understanding of Quaker life and witness. This pamphlet is called Awakening the Witness, Convincement and Belonging in Quaker Community by Matt Rosen.
Convincement is a word we use a lot. It's the experience of becoming a Quaker.
Yeah, it's the awakening of a witness inside of you. It's that moment, that process where you feel this inner shift. It's a realization there is this infinitely loving presence and a new way to live. It's not just a change in belief, but a change into a whole new way of life.
Rosen shares his own story of being a confirmed atheist who then unexpectedly felt, quote, inexplicably held, cared for, and accompanied, end quote. He became a convinced friend, but it was years before he became a member.
If you're someone who feels that convincement, that inner pull, but for whatever reason you aren't a member of a Quaker meeting, this pamphlet is a reassurance that it's still legitimate to call yourself a Quaker. The pamphlet is Awakening the Witness, Convincement and Belonging in Quaker Community by Matt Rosen. It's Pendle Hill pamphlet number 492. You can learn more about Quaker publications and order this pamphlet at pendlehill.org. You can read the review of Awakening the Witness by John Andrew Gallery at friendsjournal.com. And Peterson, you have a recommendation for us.
This month I want to recommend the Iranian film It Was Just an Accident. It's directed by Jafar Panahi. This film has won major awards at Cannes and has a 97% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. The story follows a group of former political prisoners who unexpectedly come face to face with one of their most vicious torturers. What unfolds is a darkly comic, surreal, and morally complicated story. Will they take revenge? Can they free themselves from the trauma they carry? At one point, Shiva, played by Miriam Afshari, insists, "But we are not like them," a line that becomes the film's spiritual anchor. The way the film was made is just as extraordinary. Panahi, long banned from filmmaking, shot it in secret locations across Iran, inside a van, in back alleys, out in the desert. The team hid footage, used decoy memory cards during a staged police raid, and sent part of the film abroad for safe editing. For me, It Was Just an Accident is a powerful political witness. It shows what fear and violence do to a people and the courage it takes not to become like the perpetrators who harmed you.
That reminds me of a movie I saw last year at the New York Film Festival called Seed of a Sacred Fig. Similarly to It Was Just an Accident, it was filmed in Iran very secretly. It was filmed during the protests after Masha Amini died in police custody, allegedly for not wearing her hijab correctly. Okay. The director, Mohammad Rasulov, filmed the movie in secret and had to flee Iran after it was also accepted in Cannes last year. Seed of a Sacred Fig is streaming on Hulu, and you can rent it on other platforms. And Peterson, It Was Just an Accident sounds like an amazing movie. Where can we watch it?
Well, currently it's in select movie theaters. I believe it's going to be up for some Oscar. It needs to be. And so at some point it will be streaming. But right now it's available at movie theaters.
Amazing. Peterson, we started this episode by asking, what do Quakers believe? And I'm not sure we landed on a single easy answer.
Yeah. And maybe that's the most honest answer we have. The common thread isn't that believing anything in particular makes you a Quaker. but that Quakers are seekers of the truth.
A question that only elicits more questions.
Yeah, that's right.
And maybe that's all I can ask for. Well, thank you, friends, for joining us on this episode of Quakers Today. Do us a favor, rate and review our show on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It really helps us get our podcast to more folks with questions like these. And thank you for sharing Quakers Today with your friends and on social media.
And if you haven't done so yet, share it with your Quaker meeting. I've been visiting Quaker meetings and I'm surprised how few people know about the podcast. So let's get that word out, please.
Amazing, yeah. Quakers Today is written and produced by me, Sweet Miche.
And me, Peterson, Toscano. Music on today's show comes from Epidemic Sound.
Season 5 of Quakers Today is sponsored by the American Friends Service Committee. The American Friends Service Committee works at the forefront of social change to meet urgent needs, challenge injustice, and build peace. The U.S. spends over $200 billion a year on prisons and policing, more per capita than any other country. With disproportionate harm to people of color and the poor, AFSC's North Star vision calls for transformative alternatives rooted in healing, restoration, and human dignity. Learn more at afsc.org/North Star.
Season 5 of Quakers Today is also sponsored by Friends Fiduciary. Friends Fiduciary unites Quaker values with expert investing. They serve more than 460 organizations with ethical portfolios, shareholder advocacy, and a deep commitment to justice and sustainability. Investing isn't just about returns, it's about values. For over 125 years, Friends Fiduciary has provided affordable, professional investment management to meetings, churches, and schools. Today, they manage $700 million in assets for over 460 organizations. Learn more at friendsfiduciary.org.
Visit QuakersToday.org to see our show notes and a full transcript of this episode. And if you stick around after closing, you'll hear listeners' responses to the question, what do you believe now that you didn't believe before becoming a friend or before encountering Quakerism?
Thank you, friend. May your life be filled with love and friendship. In a moment, you'll hear listeners answering our question, what do you believe now that you didn't believe before becoming a friend or before encountering Quakerism?
But before that, I want to ask you next month's question. What is something you learned in school about Native Americans or Indigenous peoples that you've since learned is not true?
Sweet Miche, I'm so glad you're asking this question. I was humiliated a couple of years ago by my husband, who's South African. And after we spent time in South Africa, he was writing about Indigenous people there. We come back to the United States and he says, so what do you know about Indigenous people in the United States? And I've done my own research, but he was really interested in what I learned in school. And I realized I didn't know much about anything other than inadvertently we'd given blankets to some Native American people and unwittingly infected them with diseases. And I had no details. Well, it didn't take him too long to figure out that there are details. There's an exact place, location. This is the first recorded case of germ warfare. And it happened at Fort Pitt. And he went and visited it recently. And so this weird, vague kind of story is an actual story. And it's a terrible story. And there's so many other things like, I can't believe I didn't know, but the education has not been great in this area. So I'm curious to see what people, have realized is not true that they learned. And more importantly, I guess, what haven't you learned that you have since learned that is important to know about?
Yeah, absolutely. We're recording this podcast the day before Thanksgiving. So this is very much on my mind, as I'm sure it is for a lot of folks. We'd love to hear from you. Leave us a voice memo with your name and the town where you live. The number to call is 317-782-5377 or 317-Quakers. You can also email us at podcast@QuakersToday.org or podcast@friendsjournal.org.
And of course, feel free to leave a comment when you see this question pop up on our social media pages. We have TikTok, X, Blue Sky, well, my Blue Sky, Instagram. All these details are in our show notes over at QuakersToday.org.
And here are the answers to what do you believe now that you didn't believe before becoming a friend or before encountering Quakerism?
One theme that came through again and again was how Quaker faith reshapes people's relationship to church, power, and history.
Jeremy wrote in with a really striking story. He grew up Mormon in a restorationist tradition that talked a lot about a great apostasy and a return to New Testament Christianity.
Jeremy says that idea started to fall apart when he saw the very human flaws of the leaders he'd been told to trust. And one of the things with Mormons is they too believe in continuing revelation. So he kind of was off that idea. But then he encountered Quakers and he heard someone named the Great Apostasy as the day Constantine joined church and empire. Jeremy writes, quote, "For the first time in my life, a great apostasy made perfect sense. Returning to primitive Christianity means separating the church from political power. And that alone really can drive out so much of the behavior that has made so many people detest organized religion."
That sense of, this feels off, but I don't have language for it yet, shows up in other comments too. James told us that even as a child, he never felt God as up in heaven, far away. He says he always had empathy for the kid who was picked on and could never understand why having friends who were Jewish or Black was supposed to be a problem.
James writes, quote, "I think there's plenty of circumstantial evidence to indicate I was probably born Quaker." I love that so much.
Zoe shared that she was an ex-evangelical when she first encountered friends at a Quaker college. She says, quote, "My first revelation was the possibility of religion and spirituality being a positive force for families and communities. Quakerism restored my hope that religion can exist as uplifting, supportive, and inclusive." End quote. Yeah, it's a big shift from religion as harm to religion as healing.
Mm-hmm. And then there's that Quaker phrase, it's a classic, that still blows people's minds, quote, "that of God in everyone." One listener, Creative Decorating, wrote, quote, "The belief that there's that of God in everyone is mind-blowing. To have so much respect for other humans, regardless of their temperaments, flaws, etc., is probably the most beautiful idea I've encountered."
Moon shared something simple and profound, that I can have a relationship with the divine and still love my neighbor. It's so basic, but for a lot of us, religion taught those as almost separate tracks.
And then someone else brought in a line from the United Church of Christ, quote, "Don't put a period where God put a comma," end quote. That really sounds like continuing revelation to me.
Finally, Star left us a question that we're going to carry forward. They asked, quote, "Other than continuing revelation, what are some of the other differences between Quakers and other Christian denominations?"
Yeah, that's a huge question. And perhaps someone listening wants to share their answer. You can totally do that. We're not going to answer it in one soundbite, though, because it's a deep question. And some of our episode here actually today answers some of that, some of the differences. And we see differences between evangelical friends and unprogrammed friends. But it's exactly the kind of question that keeps coming up when people ask, what do Quakers believe? So we're going to keep circling back to it in the future episodes.
Yeah. And thank you so much for everyone who shared. And if you want to answer our next question and get featured on the episode, here it is again. What is a moment or experience where you realized a story you were taught about Indigenous peoples or the history of colonization was incomplete or wrong? And what shifted in your understanding as a result? You can always leave us a voicemail at 317-Quakers or email us at podcast@quakerstoday.org.
And like these folks did, you can leave comments in our social media. These all came from TikTok, which is blowing up. So definitely check out our TikTok account. It is really so much fun. But we also have Instagram, X, and I'm on Blue Sky, and I often post the question there. Oh, and on Facebook. We're all over the place. We really do read and listen to everything you send. And when you send a voicemail, you have no idea the sort of happy dance I do. So I'm going to give you that number again. It's 317-Quakers. Your stories keep shaping this podcast and our understanding of what it means to be friends today. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you.